Australia, where the British Empire went to die stupid. In 1788, the British Empire made its most fatal mistake. It sent convicts, naval officers, and aristocratic parasites to the southern hemisphere, armed with zero botanical knowledge, no ecological fluency, and the unshakable delusion that everything they didn't recognize was inferior. They didn't settle Australia. They crashed into it and mistook the rubble for progress. Aboriginal societies developed the most continuous land management system on Earth. Fire stick farming to manage plant succession cycles. Seasonal aquaculture systems like the Bushbim eel traps, older than Stonehenge. Star charts integrated with ecological calendars. Soil rotation, seed banking, and controlled harvesting. All of this discarded by the British within 6 months because it wasn't fenced. British agriculture in Australia was an act of war against the soil. They brought wheat, bread for wet English winters, sheep that compacted delicate native grasslands, sheep plowing techniques that destabilized fragile dryland soils, zero understanding of drought cycles or fire regimes. They turned ancient ecological balance into desertification within 1 generation because whiteness mistakes destruction for development. British settlers died of starvation next to yam fields. They watched Aboriginal people harvest seasonal tubers, trap fish, and collect bush tomatoes, then called it hunter-gatherer savagery. Why? Because there were no visible fences. Because property, to them, meant control, not comprehension. They literally died in full grocery stores because their ideology made learning beneath them. 1932, the Australian military loses a coordinated military campaign to emus because they couldn't outthink a bird, because they never adapted to the land. They just imposed abstractions onto it. Machine guns against birds, and they missed. Because when you treat nature like an enemy, even a bird can outwit your empire. White settlers declared Australia harsh, wild, unhospitable. That's not a description of the land. That's a confession of ignorance, because the land had been inhabited deeply, sustainably, skillfully for 2,000 generations. They didn't see complexity, so they declared emptiness. They couldn't master it, so they called it hostile. They were strangers to land, with no intention of becoming students. White Australia is built on a constant need to not know how Aboriginal fire regimes prevented megafires, not know how indigenous aquaculture outperformed European models in droughts, not know that the very ecosystems they exploit are still governed by stolen, suppressed knowledge systems. It's structural amnesia. Settler identity requires forgetting. You can't build a coherent country while denying the continent's memory. The white Australia clings to British flags in the desert, monarchy on another continent, an education system that teaches Captain Cook had discovered what was already mapped by people, with no word for discovery. They're not settlers, they're cosplayers, still LARPing as civilizers in a world that already had civilization. The British didn't bring civilization to Australia. They brought erosion, rabbits, fences, plague, and premature death. They didn't outlive the Aboriginal world. They buried it under lies and called it a nation. The stars still trace the old stories, and the birds, they're still there, still watching, still undefeated. Gope.